we launched a feature 5 years ago. It was a disaster. And it took us like months actually to put it together on the engineer side. And it was not received well, right? It also, other parts failed too on that launch.
Welcome to All Things Design, the podcast where I speak to top design leaders about how design drives digital transformations. I'm Joe Woodham, founder of Corey, Australia's leading design consultancy. We work with top brands to embed amazing designers into their teams. Our designers create experiences that millions of people use every day. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Hector Serrano, Director of Research and Design at JobAdder. He scaled a once-only UI-only design team into a strategic powerhouse, helping thousands of recruiters every day by putting user insights first. Hector, thanks for joining me today. First question, why are you a designer?
That's a good question. I think I've been always curious I remember like when I was watching movies and looking at cartoons and all of that, I always wondering how things were made in the back end, more like about like visual effects, what were the thinking behind and things like that. And I realized like design can have an impact on the other person, like watching the design, like it has an emotional impact at some point. I really like having the opportunity to impact people's life in different ways through product or maybe through other type of design. So that's what drove me into this industry.
Love it. Design plays a pivotal role in that. And especially now that everything's digital, design is one of the most important elements of how we interact with technology. So good space to be in. Look, I want to unpack your life at JobAdder, but I want to start maybe going back in time, talking through your journey as a designer. You obviously worked at some pretty decent sized companies. So where did it start? And then we'll get to JobAdder and where it is now.
Maybe 12, 13 years ago, I think I landed my first job at a manufacturing car company. I was one of the largest in Europe, is Peugeot Citroën. And I was working in the Spanish headquarters at that time in Madrid. And it was my first job. I was learning a lot. I think that's a good way to start your career, learning as much as you can. And I was working on the digital departments. We were probably coordinating the launch of the different cars throughout the year. And that was probably my first experience with product. We were developing an internal product for all the mechanics, so they could order the parts from the different factories and they could repair the cars. And it was about like how we can synchronize so they were never running out of stock and we could actually provide the different parts for the car for them. So spent there like a year. Then we moved to the south of Spain, me and my wife. And then I worked there for like 4 years. I was working in another manufacturing company. This was an interesting one. It was probably a startup on the scale-up phase. They were owning like 5 brands that were distributed globally, and they were manufacturing different gaming products like headsets, keyboards. Because the design team was small and we were working with different industries and different companies. The production was happening in China. We were distributing across whole Europe. We have our own e-commerce at the same time, and we have different distributors. So it gave me the opportunity to work in different areas within design. I was doing product design, industrial design, branding, web design. I was also designing the software for the products that we were developing because they needed to be configured at some point for the user. That's what I realized. I really like industrial design because I remember going to different shops and seeing people buying the products.
If you're enjoying today's video, please make sure you hit subscribe and give us a like so other people like yourself can find the video and get some value from it.
I early design, like probably the year before. So that was really exciting just to see, especially because the target was like kids between 10 and 18 years old, probably up to 30 years old. So it was really exciting to see the smile in their faces when they were buying the product and they were really happy for that. But it's limited, right? Industrial design, you need to consider many factors when you are designing, like what's going to be the cost, where you're going to be positioning the product, what is going to be your competition. When I was designing the software for these products, I could realize like there was more freedom, right? There was no cost aggregated to how I was actually designing the product. So I decided at that time, like, okay, this is what I want to do moving forward. I want to work on the digital space, designing products for SaaS companies, maybe fintech or any other industry. After that, I moved to Luxembourg. It's a small country in the middle of Europe. And I worked there for 2.5 years for a bank. I think it's the largest bank in the northern countries in Europe. And I was working there. It was a completely different experience going from like a small, medium company to a very large organization. There is a lot of limitations there. And then in banking, they're a bit of the laggards with technology because they have a lot of restrictions. So it was really hard to bring in innovation. I developed, I think, e-learning platform, and we redesigned the entire investment platform. But yeah, there was a lot of constraints during the development process. Right. And after a few years, we got the opportunity to move to Australia, and that was 2019. And then I landed in Sydney, and in 2 months, I was interviewing for JobAdder, and I've been working for JobAdder since then. It's been like 5 years and a half. It's been amazing.
Enjoyable journey?
Yes, a lot of different experience from different industries, different ways of utilizing design skills and see how you can implement them. So yeah, it gave me a lot of perspective about what I like and especially what I don't like, which is good.
Okay, we won't talk about what you don't like, but joining a company, like you've gone from banking to JobAdder, it's a small scaling, well, it's not small really, but it's a scaling, growing company, right? Like,
Yeah.
when you joined, how mature were they with their design approach, and how has that developed since you have joined?
It depends on what you use to measure design or design maturity. If we refer to the Envision maturity model, I will say it was level 1, very basic. The design team was embedded as part of the product function. We were reporting to the head of product, and we were mostly doing UI more than any UX or research at that time, right? Because there was no capacity or investment from the business to do that. We're scaling quickly. We had to get as many features as we could in front of the customers just to be able to continue to grow the business at that time.
So what was the evolution going from that? Did you join to take JobAdder on that design journey up the maturity ladder and sort of work on how do we improve the process here? How do we get more involved in UX or service design or anything other than just UI design? Like, how did you go about that?
I think it's the combination of many factors at the end. And I always say like, oh, we are very lucky, but there was a lot of preparation, right? They say when preparation meets opportunity, that's when you are lucky. And I think what we did is we focused first on making the team efficient, on actually trying to not cut corners on our design process, making sure like we educate those around us about like the value of like research, educating about like how to understand the different insights, how the design process actually works, and how actually makes a difference at the end when we get to develop the product, especially because developing product is not something cheap, right? You have like engineers working, you have PMs, you have designers here. So you need to make sure like you are building the right thing. Otherwise it will be probably very costly for the business. So we started working internally, defining what a good designer looks like, what are the skills that we are missing, what are the gaps that we have within the team. Then we could actually talk about that with our peers like PMs, BAs and engineers, little by little showcasing the value of like, hey, we are involved, we can give you this feedback. Look, you now have more information to make a better decision, right? And eventually, I think at the same time, JobAdder is great for its people. I think is one of the best places I ever worked with because they are all very open-minded, they're very friendly. And that creates a really good environment when you're working. And working with the PMs, it became more like a partnership, little by little. And at some point, you also need someone more in the leadership to support that and see the value. So we got a CTPO 4 years ago. He joins the company. He's managing engineering and also product. And I remember he told me, look, I don't know about design, but I know it has value. And I'm eager for you to show me the value of design. So I started working with him and the rest of the team. And I think at some point we both realized, look, design to really be able to unleash their potential need to be its own team within the organization. And I presented the idea. He was also on the right moment in time, like he thought about it. And that's when we start operating more like as a team. And that's when we become a team outside of the product team. And we start working like more as a partnership. And
beautiful. You talked a lot about educating the business, and that was kind of the MO from the start. And then it goes through to educating this person. It's like, Talk me through your process to go, all right, let's not bite off more than we can chew here, and let's start showing the impact of design in small ways to get, I guess, the trust level up and to bring people on that journey. Like, where did you start? How did you unpack that to sort of, not go too deep right away?
I remember, probably not very proud to say that, but I remember we launched a feature 5 years ago, right? And that feature was more, it wasn't design led, to put it in a way. It was more like, okay, kind of coming from other sides of the business, this is what we need. There was no research backing up. There was no like usability testing happening at that time, which is a shame, right? As designers, we don't want that to happen, but it was the reality. When we launched it, it was a disaster. And it took us like months actually to put it together on the engineer side. And it was not received well, right? It also, other parts failed too on that launch. But what we did is like, okay, everybody's like a bit freaking out. Everybody's like, okay, what happened? We have to roll back to the previous version. Let's do that. And then we kind of like step in. It was me and another designer at the time say, okay, what we have to do is like, okay, let's look at the feedback. Let's start locking in user interviews. Let's talk to the users. Let's try to identify why it's not working, what they were expecting, what we have changed in a way that they were not what they were looking for. We conducted like 7 to 10 user interviews. Then we were looking at all the insights coming from the product portal, like other different ways to get communication from the user. In 2 weeks, we identified like 3 things that if we were fixing those, everybody will be happy. And I think we released it in September, and by December, we didn't hear any more about anyone complaining. Everybody was used to it, and I think it was used like probably 1 million times a day, the feature, or between half a million, right? And the best thing that can happen when you launch something like that is like it's being used and no one tell you anything. Okay, we are doing a good job, right? And that was a moment in time when everybody realized, okay, we need research. We need to actually understand a bit better. We need to get those insights. We need to put things in front of the user before actually we start working on those features. So that's when we start to develop a bit more like the design process from end to end from that point.
I actually want to dig into that a little bit because, like, I guess when a project's going relatively pear-shaped at that volume, we've got, you say 500. How do you as designers go, all right, we need to step in and actually start speaking to users and find out what the problem is? Because I imagine everyone's kind of a little bit anxious at that time. So how do you go, all right, this is what we need to do. This is the approach that we should take, or at least try. How did you jump in?
I think we all felt responsible, right? I mean, it was not that many. I think we got like 4,000 accounts. I think is at that time we had like 12,000 customers. The good thing about the recruitment industry, like they are very vocal. So even if it was not that many, I think, I don't remember exactly the numbers, but maybe it was like 60% or 50%, but only 4 or 5% requested a rollback to the previous version. The other were happy to stick to that one as soon as we were fixing the problems that they were having. So everybody felt accountable for that. And we were all like chipping in product, engineering, and of course, design, right? And then we just like suggested, they were like, okay, though, what do we do, right? Like what? And of course, the natural path is like, okay, we need to conduct research. We need to understand why it's not working, right? So that's when we offer like, okay, we can do it. We were partnering with PMs at that time, or the PM on in the feature. And we just conducted user interviews with those customers that were complaining, just to really understand what wasn't working. So
okay.
It was like that. It just like, it came together at some point, right? Like, okay, we haven't done this. This is why it's not working. Let's conduct research and find out and then get a solution.
And has that shaped everything moving forward? Obviously, it creates, I guess, a level of trust and confidence in design straight away, right? Like you're like, well, if we did this, would have saved a lot of time and a lot of issues here. Like, how did you use that to, I guess, bring that education into I guess, the limelight of, if we do this, this is the outcome that we can expect? How did you use that as a business case?
We use it while we were looking at the numbers. I remember putting together a quick report about like, hey, this is what happened before and after, right? And we were able to solve most of the issues because we were conducting this design process and we were like actually finding out about the problem. So when you look at the numbers at the end, that's probably something easy for people that is outside of design, right? Like, and that's what has helped the team to grow their influence across the business, right? Like, we are not growing because people understand a bit better design. We translate that into something that it becomes like a mutual conversation between us and the rest of the departments. Is we talk about like data at the end. Right? Like this is what the customers are telling us. This is the current numbers. This is what we're expecting to hit. And when they see that, they feel more confident about that. Okay, what these guys are doing is not based on the internal instincts as designers. Is basically is backed up by data. They're looking at that data and they're making decisions based on that. So that's when the trust starts to build. It's just through iterations, I will say. I don't think like it goes from not seeing the value of design to seeing the value of design. It's just like it's over the years, right? The more you do and the more time that you spend on that, the more you get in return from the business.
Interesting. Like a lot of businesses look at things differently, right? Like they could be looking at the cost of a product team and how much launching something or changing something is going to cost. Are you more focused on the data of like, this is going to increase users' interaction time by this or reduce some of the friction points?
The way we operate at JobAdder now, it's we have a roadmap for the entire year, right? Like we have defined a roadmap based on the different journey stages of our users. And we have initiatives based on like all the information that we have collected the previous, probably the last quarter before the financial year. So we look at jobs to be done. We look at the existing performance of the product. We hear feedback from CS. We look at the tickets. We also look at where we are heading as a company, right? Because you might have different problems, but if a problem doesn't align to where you want the product to be in the future, probably you are not centralizing or putting your focus on that problem. And that's kind of like the basic metrics that we use. And then when we start looking into each initiative, then we always conduct research just to really understand like what are the problems the customer is facing today, why they actually have this as a task, how they perform this task today. And then we look at the product, how they use it. Is there any workaround? Is efficient enough? Like is taking them time or actually reducing time? Because at the end, the goal for JobAdder is to minimize this admin task that you have to do in front of the CRM, so you can really spend time doing more qualitative stuff, like talking to clients, to candidates, like building that relationship with your network. So we do look at the efficiency at the end and making sure like you can complete the same task, but eventually faster or even more automated than before.
Yeah. So like, how would you say like the success of your team is through driving sort of data and insights back to the business to help them make those business decisions? Like, how do you encourage that within your team?
Oh, I think when I look at the team, definitely there is people more interested on like the side of like the design spectrum, more on like the research, data, synthesizing. Those people normally put their hands up when there is a project like this. But by default, all of them, if they are working on their own initiative, they need to actually go through that process, right? Some of them do it more like naturally, and some of them actually do it because they really need that insights and information in order to make a decision at the end and start having something to work with and design it. So they don't do it. But in terms of influencing the business or communicating that back to the business, that's probably projects that we conduct on the side. It's not part of our development process. It's more like a generative research that we have done over the years just to provide information to the user that who is our customers, right? Who is our ICP, how they operate today, what are the nuances between our ICP 1, 2, and 3. And that has helped a lot to really have a strategy in the business to know exactly for who we are building product and what are the problems that we are solving for them. And that has become probably the common language across the business.
Okay. Now, I guess In terms of your journey at JobAdder, you've obviously moved to being able to communicate at like a business level, right? So you're dealing with the executives in terms of how design impacts. Like, how have you changed your communication style to ensure that you're communicating things in a way that they understand or they appreciate?
I mean, I think I have a lot of room for improvement, that for sure. But I think what I do today, or what we have done in the past few years, is we know like every business wants to be more data driven. We want to leverage data. JobAdder has a lot of data from our customers, and we want to take that back to them and provide it to them. We have tried many things. I remember one of the first projects that we did, it was an interactive tool, and this was a side project for my team, where we were like creating the different personas within an agency, or like, okay, this is how display between temp desk or multi-desk or perm desk. And if you open those different personas or different organizations, you will see, okay, this is a director and this is what they care about. This is a consultant and this is the things that they need. So we kind of did that as a way to try to educate the business about the customer, right? Because we all care about the customer at the end. And we thought, okay, this is the first thing that we can use as a way of telling them we know our customers and they are going to know our customers too. And it was very well received. I remember it became part of like the onboarding process for any new JobAdder employee. They now have to actually go there and look at the different information. And then what we did after that, it was defining the jobs to be done for JobAdder. We didn't have those a few years ago. And we knew it was a metric like many business use at the end to understand like what is the user satisfaction and compare that with the current product performance. And that is a strategic view of like, okay, what are the gaps that we need to be targeting next in order to make the product actually better and keep the user satisfied. And I remember we released that report, and that was the first report that really went straight to the CEO. And he asked me to run a presentation about, okay, can you walk me through the jobs to be done, the research, what did you guys find, what are the gaps? So it was a way of like talking about, okay, this is the product and this is when we need to put focus on in order to grow the product capabilities so we can actually grow our market share. And then since then, we have just continued to develop the research. I think it was last year, we did like an in-depth industry research. And that research was more about like we being agnostic of product. It's just like to understand agencies, right? Like Tori Consulting or any other agency, right? How teams are formed, how they operate, do they split the work, do they do 360? What is the manager consultant ratio? What business phase they go through? You go through scale up, growth, you go to enterprise, you actually go to another phase when you are sizing down because something is happening. The industries, because every agency work on up to 5 industries, depending on the size. And you can see many other information that we didn't have before. And that showcase again to the business, like the value of research and design. Because when you present research, they know that we are using that research to design, right? The product, the solution. So it goes hand by hand. And they start to get that more and more.
And obviously working with the CEO, it sounds like he appreciated that first presentation. How has he started working with you closer to understand your process and make sure the business is design-led?
I remember he said that we are a design-led, and I think it was mentioned like it's part of like a unique selling point or USP, like we are a design-led organization. That felt really good, right? I don't know where it come from. I don't know why he thought that way. I guess because probably he understood better the process that we go within product development in order to get the right solutions in front of our users. And then he understood that. And at the same time, I think we are lucky, and that's another area we are lucky because our CEO, he's very open-minded. He's always listening to every department. He wants to understand how every department operates, and he sees value in every department in different ways. And as soon as I got the opportunity to show the value, he got it. He was like, oh yeah, I see, I understand. And the conversations with him is asking me for more research or any other areas that probably we know less, and it will be great to know more. And now we are working on how we can measure better usability, how we can turn usability into efficiency, so we can then communicate that to prospects and existing customers. Like, hey, we are making this part of the product not only more usable, but this is translated to business efficiency for you as a customer. And we will be able to start measuring those things very soon, which is great. So,
How have you educated yourself as a designer to be able to communicate at that level? Because like the designers are very focused on users, right? And that's what you're doing is you're getting the data and the research from the users, but you're able to translate that back to the business so the business understands it and can now say they're design led. There's a lot of time there's a communication block between design and the business. How have you bridged that gap?
I don't know how. I mean, I think it's because I came from banking, right? Like the conversations are completely different when you're working in banking, and the things that they consider it's more like number driven. So I got that experience from my previous years. And I think when I was at job at the beginning, like 3 years, I could sense that design was perceived like, hey, this is a department that is a key department for product development, but the language was not the same language. And I had the opportunity to get like presentations from the CEO, what he was talking about, also from my direct boss, the CTPO, things that were discussed at the executive leadership level. And I could see like, okay, that's what they care about. Right? And you also have to do a lot of research on your own. And there is a lot of education out there about like, okay, what the CEOs care about, what do you need to be talking to them. I guess at some point I realized, okay, talking about design as design itself and the user probably is not enough for a CEO that is completely disconnected from this part of the company to really understand, right? Because you are going from like a top level to a team that is sitting within another team with more teams, right? So when you like presenting data to him, at some point it will pique his interest, and it did. Because it brought value to the business, right? It's just not like you present information. You present information in a way that you can then, okay, because we know this, now we can do this, right? It's like the value that comes with the data that you are giving back to them. What makes a difference?
Do you drop the design terminology to be able to communicate to the CEO? Do you stop talking about specific design terms and just talk, I guess, a bit more direct?
I will say yes. I will say yes. At some point, I drop it. It's okay, right? Like probably if I'm talking with a colleague from another department, there will be some technicality that I will not understand. And I will get lost in the conversation if that person gets too deep into the technical aspect of their role and department, right? So understanding that, I know like if I go into the details of design, UX patterns, usability, what the customer needs, how to make it scalable, probably that will get someone that is a bit lost in the conversation, right? So I try to reframe the things I told to him about into something that maybe he can get something out of it at the end of the conversation. So I try to make the conversation with him valuable for him if I can.
How do you condense all of that into like the smallest window that you've got? Because I obviously when you get to that level, you're trying to condense a lot of your information or your knowledge into something that's usable for them in a very short amount of time. How do you do that? Do you have a process that you can go through to condense it all and go,
I will say being completely honest, my conversations with him are like very casual in the sense like we don't go with an agenda. It's like kind of like a check-in, and then I can share. He asked for my opinion on things that might be going on at JobAdder and what I think, because again, he's a person that really likes to hear everybody's opinion. So I have the opportunity to share mine. And something I read a while ago is like a CEO, the things that will value the most is like honesty. You cannot sugarcoat anything. You need to be honest, because at the end of the day, they need to know things that are happening at the organization so they can make decisions, right? So how I pack everything that we have done for him to digest it, I put together reports whenever we have something solid, right? And I'm very specific. Like we don't produce reports just for the sake of getting a report out and just providing some information. Because I think the more you produce, the less powerful it gets, because it becomes like a recurrent thing. So maybe you don't see much happening. But if you condense, like I think this year actually we haven't produced. We only produced one report, And last year we produced 2, and I don't have any report in mind in the next 6 months, because until I have something that really can make a difference, I would rather not say anything.
Can you? I love that approach, because the last thing is I want to report on my desk once a week or once a month, or like, what warrants a report from you? If you've only done 1 this year and 2 last year, what warrants a Hector report?
What do you mean? Sorry. What do you mean with
Like, what would you write the report on to put in front of your CEO? Like, what would it be based on? What's important enough for you to go, I think we need to share these insights?
I think, well, the last one was about like our industry and where we operate. I think the next one we are doing now with these jobs to be done reassessment. We are looking at jobs to be done version 2, because we defined after the last industry report, we kind of create a new journey map that applies almost to every agency, because it's very general. And now we are looking stage by stage at all the different jobs to be done, and we are utilizing information that we have for the industry to classify those jobs to be done, if they belong to ICP 1 or 2, or if they have different expectations depending on the size of the agency or the industry that they're working on. After that, what I will be doing is then measuring again the performance of JobAdder based on all the different parameters that now we are identifying through this research. And when I have that, and I can really look at and say, hey, if we are targeting ICP 1, this is how we are performing today, and this is the gaps. When I get that, then I will be presenting that to him and the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
Because I think that will help a lot with the goals at a company level and the strategy moving forward.
Yeah. Now, I guess from what JobAdder is doing, they are design-led. You're reporting to the CEO. If I was like a business who obviously were going down that journey of becoming design-led, like, what's something that you think helped JobAdder and you on that journey from either a business perspective or a design leader like yourself? Like, what moved that journey along, and what piece of advice would you give someone else trying to go on the same journey?
The first thing is really understand your business and the industry that this business operates, right? Because that's gonna help you to understand how much room do you have to increase design as a key department within the organization. And then the next advice will be sometimes I see oh, they expect the leader or the person representing the team is the only one that should be pushing for that, right? And I always tell the team, look, we all push at different levels, right? I'm not in every meeting with every engineer or with every PM, but you are, right? Every time that you are in front of someone else that is not a designer, you have that opportunity to showcase the value of design, right? And they all know that when you get a team, because it's not everything I have said so far is not my success, my team's success, right? I don't think I would be been able to do anything if it wasn't for them. They all push at their levels with the people that they work with on a daily basis. And then I'm the one probably trying to make that visible for the rest of the organization. Look what the team is doing. And then I'm the one probably representing them and representing the team in the spaces that they cannot get into yet, probably talking more closely with the CPO or the CEO. So for any team trying to grow the design presence or design influence, I would say everybody has responsibility within the team. They should not be pointing at the leader, but they should all actually become accountable for that and make sure every opportunity is utilized.
How do you make sure your team, or educate your team to make sure they are utilizing those opportunities and selling design at every stage of the process? Like, do you have certain things that you do with them to make sure that they're confident, they feel safe to be able to push back or be heard or be seen?
I think, well, I don't know what they will think about me. What I will say is I really try to build their confidence as much as I can. I think they're all amazing. They are better than me in many things, and I learn a lot from them. So I always tell them hey, you represent the customer in those conversations, right? And you represent and should be protecting usability and keeping the product simple, right? Because that's your area of responsibility, right? You are probably in that space the most skilled person in that room, right? So don't be shy, share your opinion. At the same time, as I said before, it's an environment, like every opinion is now very well received. We talk to engineers on a daily basis with PMs, and we listen to each other. And all the voices are equally loud within the room. So they have that confidence. They are confident that they know what they're doing, and they are the experts in the room in that space, and they just communicate that. They share their opinions with the rest of the team on every conversation. So that's how I think they do it.
You've got to build like a safe environment that people feel comfortable enough to do it. And that's probably the starting point. I've really enjoyed hearing about how JobAdder approach things from a design perspective and how you've sort of grown within that role. It's been a great conversation. If anyone wants to reach out to you and speak to you directly, is the best way to connect with you via LinkedIn?
Yes.
It was amazing. I think there's probably lots of people that'd be keen to know more.
Well, thank you so much.
That's it for today's episode. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you hit subscribe. Also, leave us a comment and a like. It helps people like yourself find this video.